Howdy folks, Deacon Parsons here. A while back I uploaded an ambitious video entitled, "What Does It Take to Be a Man?" It's been reasonably well received and had some very interesting comments. One comment from Professor Janice Fiamingo asked a question, and I gave it an initial answer in the comments section, but I knew I'd have to make a more thorough answer later. This three-part series is that answer. Professor Fiamingo's question, quote, "What would you say to modern men who feel their masculinity is under attack? How does one stay a man in a society that doesn't like manliness?" My initial reading of the question put me in the mindset of all the physical confrontations that we've seen lately, and I answered it in that vein in the comments. The natural and reasonable response to being attacked is to defend oneself and counterattack if appropriate. When we look at the way that peaceful protesters treat people, the way they use people's inherent niceness and nonviolent temperament against them, there comes a point where a lack of response simply emboldens the savages and becomes self-defeating. Looking at the stupid post-election protests / riots, these people are pushing for violence, and they will eventually have to be given what they ask for. This is a cold and hard thing to say, but facts are facts. How many colleges were burned down after Kent State? I would like to think that we've learned enough from history to avoid repeating that history, but current events seem to indicate otherwise. I'm really hoping that I'm wrong. But let's break down the professor's question and look at it in a broader sense. The first part, what would you say to modern men who feel their masculinity is under attack? Being a man has always been a struggle. Mother Nature is a mean old witch, and she's trying to kill us. For thousands of years, the difference between a boy and a man has been the boy's ability to step up and join the fight for survival. As I indicated in my first video, an individual man's manhood is a self-evident fact. It cannot be effectively attacked by anyone but himself and the very few people whose opinions he values. If a man allows someone who is not part of his select few to attack his personal masculinity, he has not solidified his manhood within himself. I tried to address this in my first video, but I will address it further in later parts of this video series. The second part of the question, how does one stay a man in a society that doesn't like manliness? My initial response is that one tells society to kiss one's hairy gluteus maximus, then gets up off that hairy gluteus maximus and becomes the man he has decided he wants to be. At a certain point in our lives, society only has the influence that we let it have. If we've determined that society is wrong, we can't always stop society, but we don't have to go along with it. And we do need to consider that with Brexit and the election of Trump, society appears to be set for a significant reorganization that rejects political correctness and social justice warrior mores. But is it really society that doesn't like manliness? Males are about half the population, and historically men built civilization. It would be easy to blame feminists, but 80% of women don't identify as feminists. That means only 10% of the population are feminist women. As feminism's influence in society increased, women's reported happiness decreased. How did they get the power they currently wield? Well, because we let them. But that is poised to change. We know that feminism isn't really about women or women's rights at all. Feminism is a Trojan horse. It's Marxism in a braless pantsuit. Is it really all that surprising that feminism isn't destroying Russia and China? Or that other countries and people that want to see the West fall, like those in the Middle East, aren't plagued with feminism, and that Western feminists conspicuously leave them alone? Society has begun to recognize that the cancer of feminism is a metastasized form of Marxism. It was intentionally implanted in our social structures with the express purpose of destroying us. And to our discredit, too many of us went along with it for far too long. Edmund Burke is famously quoted, "All that is necessary for evil to triumph is that good men do nothing." Well, good men and good women have decided it's time to quit doing nothing and start being heard. In academia, across several internet communities, in real-world politics in Europe and North America, people of diverse backgrounds are making stands and challenging feminism, social justice warriors, and other Marxist operations. We see real-world effects of these movements with Brexit and with the election of Donald Trump. People with diverse backgrounds and priorities are realizing that we all have a common enemy. We had a functioning and thriving culture before we industrialized ourselves into a new and uncharted territory. We made obsolete the basic survival and economic pressures our species thrived upon. We can have a functioning and thriving culture again. But instead of just laissez-faire allowing it to form around outside forces, we will have to take into account where we came from, what our past made us, and consciously design a new society in this new alternative paradigm. It won't be easy, and it will be painful. The men and women who oppose Marxism are individualists. Individualists have a much more difficult time working as a group than sheeple. That is why those who can make themselves shepherds of the sheeple have a much easier time of getting things done in a free and open society. Everyone that cares about men's rights and bringing balance back to our society will have to acknowledge that they can't have the purity of essence they want with the people they work with, and consider the others that we need to do the job. Nobody was further apart philosophically than the Soviets and the Americans in World War II, but they put aside their differences to defeat the Nazis. Atheists and deists, liberals and conservatives, anarcho-libertarians and small government proponents, MGTOW and MRAs are going to have to set aside their differences for the duration to defeat and remove the Marxist feminazi pathology from the world. We can do this. Overcoming great odds and accomplishing the impossible is historically what we do. But before men come together as a group, we must prepare ourselves individually. One of the caveats I gave in my answer on the other video is that I'm a dinosaur and I know it. I wasn't sure that my specific story would be relevant to many of today's men. As such, I tried to remove as much of my personal story as possible and just leave the boiled down essence of being a man to allow everyone else to build their own unique manhood. On further reflection, I realized that the men who made a difference in my life, who gave me the pearls of wisdom with which I built my own manhood, live very different lives than I did and do. In order to give some practical instructions on how to build one's manhood, I've concluded that I should share some stories about the 6 men in my life who were major influences in my life. Hopefully, many will have similar stories from their own history. If not, perhaps these can inspire them on their own path. I know it doesn't sound like it a lot, but I do try to keep these videos manageable. I'm going to end part 1 here. Please go ahead and see parts 2 and 3 if you want to hear the stories about the 6 men that were major influences in my life. Please like, share, and subscribe if you find this useful and you are so inclined. This is Deacon Parsons saying, love your maker, love your mate, and do what's right because it's right, and devil take the hindmost.